Okay, so I don't know how well my microphone is going to catch my voice from this angle, but I felt that a short introduction was necessary. So I am here near the Museo de Antioquia, where there is a perpetual display of the work of Fernando Botero, and recently this Colombian artist has passed away, so there is a celebration ongoing for the life and to commemorate the life of Fernando Botero and his artwork. So I figured it would be appropriate to do a little commentary on some of the statues that we have around the plaza here surrounding the Museum of Antioquia, Museo de Antioquia, whatever language you want to put that in. So, let us begin. Here we see the sculpture with the title Soldado Romano, which in Spanish means Roman soldier, and I assume from the helmet that he is a Roman legionnaire. So as you can see with this sculpture, as with all of the sculptures and paintings of Fernando Botero, we have a very, very distinct style, a very unique aesthetic. We see the figure before us is of, we might say, unnatural proportionality compared to a normal human being. As I step backwards to get the audio away from the crying child. So anyway, this statue is fairly typical of the style of Fernando Botero, but this is one of my favorite ones just because the unique character of this is like all of his figures, they exude a humorous sort of innocence, and I think this one really uniquely shows that characteristic, specific to it being a legionnaire or a Roman soldier. But you see what he's carrying. He's not carrying anything that could be construed as offensive here. Let's zoom in on his weapon. Well, not this weapon, of course. What he's holding in his hand here. You would think that a Roman soldier or legionnaire would be equipped with a sword. Typically, that's what they did have. They would have a short broadsword along with their shield, but their shield would not be so comically and ineffectually small, and they wouldn't be holding a tiny blunt cylinder instead of a sword, because that wouldn't make them particularly formidable in battle, I would presume. So you see here, like with the character of Boterismo, or Boterism as you could call it, with the very particular aesthetic style of Botero. There's nothing pointy, there's nothing offensive. There is nothing that could be construed as having a potential to do violence. It's just pure, pudgy innocence incarnate. And I really love that. It's, you know, so unique. And it just, there's a real I don't know, sense of fun about it, but at the same time it is, like very carefully constructed. Really, I'm amazed at the symmetry of all of his statues as well. Like they're not all perfectly geometrically symmetrical, but the symmetry between both halves of the sculptures and the coherence of the form from all angles is something to me that stood out. It's very unique and seems to be bordering on geometrically perfect, even though the figures themselves are cartoonish and surreal in how they express themselves, or how they are expressed, with the particular plumpness that is unique to Fernando Botero. So I'm not sure when, but there's going to be some event on here later, and it seems like there is going to be an orchestra or music, but there is no information about the event that's going to be held here later. So I'm wondering like when it's going to be on and what exactly is going to be happening here, because I would like to attend. So let's look at some more of these statues and let's do a little commentary on the style of the different statues and the different characters. I just had some guy staring in my face like I had 12 heads, even though I didn't have the camera even pointed at him, but whatever, that seems to be happening plenty in this place. So here's another one of my favorites of the statues here in the central plaza surrounding the Museo de Antioquia. And I really like the names, the simplicity of the names of all these statues as well. They remind me of albums by the band The Jesus Lizard, because if I recall correctly, that's the right band I'm thinking of, and the albums of the band all had very, very simple names. So here, again, we have a very simple name, like Roman soldier. This one is called Hombre a Caballo. A caballo, yeah. So like man on horse. So it's a very unique style of individual as well. He doesn't look super Colombian. To me, this guy looks like a player piece that you would use in the game Monopoly. Or he looks like particularly Anglo in character, with his bowler hat and his three-piece suit, and mounted atop his lovely horse. Hola! Yeah, we have people waving, but today we are not interested so much in the people, we are interested in the art and the beautiful environment. Look at this in the background. What a beautiful piece of architecture. But back to Hombre a Caballo. I don't have as much to say about this chap here. I just like the look on his face. He seems wrapped in concentration, and even for a chubby, preposterous looking fellow like himself, he seems to have a fairly noble posture, and seems to be pondering deeply what is over yonder to the left on the horizon. But as I look that way myself, at least currently, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot going on over there. So I guess he is existing in some other space that he was designed to be taking part in, and the buildings in the surrounding area are maybe a little less interesting than the phantasm of an imaginary space that this chap on his horse is looking at so ponderously. So let's see, I'm not going to give a commentary on all the different pieces because I just want to focus on a few and there are some that I find more interesting than others, and there are some that I don't find super interesting at all. But really, this plaza is amazing, and we have really beautiful architecture. I don't know the name of this building here. I don't know, is that an extension of the museum? But this area here is really nice, and we have lots of stuff to see. I have to check out the museum later. Here we have the Roman soldier again, our legionnaire friend. So let's find a maybe more circuitous route so we can avoid the majority of the crowds here while we film. So yeah, as we can see, it's quite busy today, but it's thankfully not super hot. No tengo mucho calor hoy, which is great, because recently it has been really hot, much hotter than last time I was in Medellin. So let's see what this building is. I think it must be an extension of the museum, is it? Let's see. Mi pintura tiene dos fuentes primordiales. Okay, that's some quote from okay. Mis convicciones estesias y el mundo latinoamericano en el cual crecí, porque creo que el arte debe tener raíces, debe pertenecer a una tierra. Okay, my Spanish is not good enough to understand all of that. I could hazard a guess, but I'm probably going to butcher it, but that's something that I can look up later, because at least from what I can translate, the sentiment seems nice. It seems to be about the different aesthetic style and how it's supposed to represent the conviction or the aesthetics of the world of Latin America, and yeah, like what there is to see therein. So I have a few more I want to see here. This one, I just noticed there's a bird on the head of this one at the moment. This one is not one of my favorites, so I don't really know what to say about this one, to be honest. But again, in the typical Boterismo style, what's the name here? Pensamiento. So I guess this means thinking. So this fat lady standing on her own head is apparently a representation of being deep in thought, potentially. And the bird on her head, I think, also represents maybe some flourishing thoughts occurring therein. And one thing actually that this particular style, the Boterist style of sculpture, and also the painting, but more so the sculpture, I think maybe the estate of Fernando Botero could have a viable lawsuit against the makers of Funko Pop dolls, because they really seemed to borrow from the aesthetic of Boterist art, and we have people intentionally being loud behind me to try to be annoying, like Colombians often do. So I'm going to walk over here so these people trying to be annoying behind me aren't going to interfere with what I'm saying. So yeah, as I was saying, I think the estate of Fernando Botero might have a legal claim to enact a lawsuit against the creators of Funko Pops, because the aesthetic just seems to be borrowed entirely from Fernando Botero and his particular style of plump and full fatty type characters with cartoonish proportions, as we see here, and which is also typical of the Funko Pop style. And I was thinking as well of just the particular aesthetic of the work of Botero. Let's go over here and look at Cabeza, because this is one of the ones I like a lot too. So yeah, and they're doing a sound check here for the event later, so I'm going to maybe have to stop speaking while they do the sound check, and while a helicopter goes overhead. So I will pause a moment while we hopefully have the sound check completed and I can continue speaking. So over here we have Cabeza, which means head, and this is another one of my favorite Botero sculptures around this plaza here. Preoccupado, gracias. So yeah, some people, they just don't care if you're doing anything else. They just interrupt you and talk to you and try to sell you stuff, and sometimes I think it's intentionally just to annoy you, because they can see that you're doing something and they just want to interrupt you to get money from you. So anyway, here we have Cabeza, and one commentary I was going to make about the Boterist style is like the fullness of the face, and like typical South American style head as well. Like if you're a big white Irish weird looking son of a bitch like myself, and you're walking around Colombia on your own, you will very often turn and see a big fat Colombian head just staring at you like this, but not a statue, I mean like from a literal fat-headed Colombian, and you kind of just have to get used to it, because they sometimes just stare, and you just have to like either smile or ignore them, but this is typical. Aside in Colombia, you just see, oh, ¿qué es eso? Un blanquito, uy, Dios mío. So anyway, like the style, as I was saying, it's like the fullness, it's like the figure is pumped full of air or some sort of fluid and is about to pop, and it's like almost like on the verge of erupting into a work of art akin to something created by Francis Bacon. Because if you know the style of Francis Bacon, it's based on a mall or an initial accident. So if you know the work of Francis Bacon, you might be familiar with the figure he has, which is somewhat of a representation of the Pope. And I don't know, is it Pope John Paul in the Pope Mobile, but it's a very unique style, as Francis Bacon tends to be, in that the beginning of the work is something completely random. So it's just a random chaotic mark on the page that's like a big glaring mistake, and then he makes something beautiful out of that. But the image of the Pope in the Pope Mobile, which is like based on a mall, it's kind of like demonic looking, and it's almost like the head is after exploding or melting, and it's just, you know, it's got a real visceral quality to it that just almost jumps off the canvas. And I was thinking of that earlier as like the Botero style being like the precursor to the exploded head of the figure in Francis Bacon's work, for example. And it's like right on the verge of popping. So, you know, we have the big Boterismo fat head, and it looks like it's about to explode, and maybe potentially end up like something out of the work of Francis Bacon. So we have one more that I really like, gato, because me gusta los gatos, but you know, like I don't want to like film too many people or like, you know, bother too many people with my camera, because, you know, not everybody is super happy about being on camera all the time, but at the same time we're in a public place and I want to get some footage of this art and do a little bit of commentary on the different sculptures, and especially the ones I like Signor Gatto over here. So Mi grossito gatito. Again, as we can see, not an average looking cat, maybe a sort of cat that has been getting fed from the neighbors as well as from the owners, and has put on a few extra pounds, so it's a bit of a fat cat at the moment, but I just love the face, you know, again, like the innocence and the fun and the pure harmless joy of life that the sculptures of Botero exude. It's just, you know, we have a cat, but, you know, no claws, and it's just about the most chubby, cuddly cat that you could possibly imagine at the same time, you know, with a little bit of tongue sticking out as well, which is always endearing when you see a kitty with the tongue sticking out. But again, just beautifully symmetrical as well. Like, this is again one of the sculptures that I was referencing earlier when I was talking about the real like careful symmetry and almost geometric perfection between the different sides of the sculptures. Look at this. I mean, you could cut this right down the center with I don't know what, and it would be like perfectly overlaid, like both sides. It is so perfectly geometrically symmetrical. As you can see, it is just like, if this was made by hand, I don't know how in the name of God you could get something that geometrically perfect just with your eye and with your hand, and sculpting that without the use of like computer articulated design or computer design in order to carve the actual sculpture and have the finished product be so perfectly symmetrical as some of these are. And yeah, that's just basically the thing I was referencing earlier, and this perfectly exemplifies that characteristic. So we're gonna see, is there anything else that I like up here that's worth talking about, or we can maybe just quietly film some of the other pieces. Here we have Adam and Eve, so they're one piece, but at the same time they're two separate pieces, and they are opposed and in unison at the same time, you know, the male and the female, the eternally opposed but the eternally intertwined, as we see here, separated by an infinite amount of space but unified in the act of artistic expression. Oh, beautiful. So here, a little bit obscenity for you. Let's maybe not film that angle. Whatever. I'm not trying to film you. I don't give a shit. Yeah, just people afraid of the camera, and like I give a fuck about filming them anyway. Like, God, how uninteresting most of you people are to me. You will never have any idea. So here we have another Boterist fatty, and all these statues are made out of bronze as well. And I read that earlier in his life he didn't have the money to make bronze sculptures, and he made sculptures out of sawdust and some sort of acrylic, I believe, or paper mache, and they didn't have the same finish, obviously, because we can see the smoothness of the finish is really unique to all of his work as well, especially these sculptures. His paintings, I like his paintings, and they are quite unique to the sculptures in that they have a lot more depth as far as like shading and as far as detail. And the statues themselves are like incredibly beautifully unique, but they have a very, very smooth, almost cartoon-like finish, like an action figure, or as we said earlier, the Funko Pop doll. And the paintings just have more depth, because, you know, when you're painting, obviously, like, there's more to, like, a sculpture. The shading is natural, as you can see, you know, the sun is cast on this at different angles throughout the day, and the shading will be different throughout the day depending on where the sun is in the sky and how much cloud there is in the sky and how much there is a lack of cloud in the sky. But with a painting, the shading is done by the artist in the moment, and it is a part of the painting, so it doesn't change, and it is a number of layers of unique detail that are not going to alter, you know, depending on time of day, or that are not going to be absent to be filled in by the lighting in the environment, for example. So, hombre vestido, I guess vestido means dress, so like I guess it means like what, well-dressed man, something like that. And again, these men in suits with the bowler hats, they look very, very strangely, typically Anglo-Saxon in characteristic in nature. They don't look particularly South American as far as you know, my idea of South American aesthetics generally, as far as people go. And this one, yeah, this again, it looks like a fat British lady from the 1960s, mujer vestida, so what, like well-dressed female, something like that. And again, more of the same as far as the character. These are some of his older statues, so maybe slightly less well finished and slightly less detail and less geometrically perfect, as I was pointing out with some of the other sculptures here. So yeah, those are most of the ones that I wanted to get some footage of and that I wanted to make a few comments on. So I'm just going to relatively silently just take a few frames of footage of a few of the ones down here tucked away to the side of the area fenced off for the music performance of later or tomorrow, or I don't know when it's going to be, because they were setting this up yesterday and I'm not sure if the concert is going to be today, if it's going to be tomorrow, if there are going to be a number of days of music to celebrate Fernando's life. Yeah, I keep almost calling him Francisco, but no, Fernando, see. But yeah, like, I'm just really glad it's not so hot today, because I can walk around and film and not be absolutely cooked, because here in the plaza, you're out in the open. Look at this beautiful place. Beautiful giant palm trees reaching up into the sky. And I'll try not to get in the way of other people's shots now, because I know how bothersome that can be. So yeah, we have like, what, 1, 2, 3, 4 more statues here that I just want to take a quick little look at, but they're not my favorites, so I just want to see them. I like the one over here, mano, which is hand, because I like hands, and little bit of a fascination with hands, and I always like looking at different kinds of hands and the different you know, like structures of different hands of different sized and differently composed people. So what's the name on this one here? We have a lovely lady holding an apple. Is this another form of an Eve? Maybe. No, a mujer con fruta. Okay, maybe it's not even an apple, it's just a piece of fruit of some kind. So mujer con fruta obviously means woman with fruit, and we can see typical boterismo, chobismo, typical archetypal fatness, as tends to be the body composition of his figures always. And here we have mano. I think my hand is more attractive because it's less fat, and this hand here has rather small and stubby fingers, but at the same time it's a beautiful work of art because apparently it's very difficult to not only sculpt but to draw hands, and that's become quite apparent recently with the innovation of artificial intelligence created art. So AI art, one of the things that it always gets wrong are hands, and it can't get hands right for whatever reason. So if you try to create an AI piece of art, often the figures will have like weird claw-like hands, or hands with like 6 or 7 fingers, and for whatever reason artificial intelligence cannot figure out hands so well. And also a lot of artists, they can't figure out so well how to depict or how to sculpt hands, and so that one is a bit of a beauty. I'll just get the back of it there in a little while when that chappie is done taking his pictures. And what's this one called? Esfinge. I don't even know what that means or if the pronunciation is correct. Here, let's just zoom in. I think that's what it says. Esfinge. I don't know what that word is. I'm going to presume no, because angel in Spanish is angel, which is pretty much the same word. So I don't know the story behind like what this lady is supposed to be or what the character is supposed to be. Oh, okay, she seems like some sort of half woman, half griffin or something, because she's got wings like a griffin. She's got hind legs like a lion or a dog. So, Esfinge could be something like Sphinx, because maybe she has the hind quarters of a cat and the wings of a bird. So maybe this is a Sphinx, or a representation of a Sphinx. The word is similar enough anyway, so maybe that's what that is. And here we have the museum, and later we might have the musical performance, and I just wanted to get the back of this hand here and not film too many people as I do so. So again, we see mano, 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 mano. I prefer my hand. I have a more, I don't know, archetypally pretty hand, except my calluses, but yeah, that's an interesting statue nonetheless, even though it is a strangely warped fat hand, but like it's a Boterist statue, so I mean, what is it going to be, a slender and normal looking hand? I don't think so. So yeah, I'll just point the camera up in the air so I'm not shoving it in anybody's face. So I guess the musical performance is going to be today, because there are people already lined up and sitting down, and there are some of the musicians who are already seated. So surely it is going to be this evening. I might bring my camera home and then come back and attend the musical performance, because I'd like to see what's going to be played here. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's going to be, I don't know, like, is it technically an orchestra if they have a lot of instruments that are more traditional to South America? I guess it would be, because I see a lot of brass instruments, like traditional brass instruments that are more ancient. So I guess we could call it an orchestra, but there are also more exotic instruments and pieces of percussion, for example, set up here. Like we have tribal drums and different, I don't know what are they, like steel drums or cymbals or what? I can't see so well from here. But yeah, interesting. Might attend. Okay, that's pretty much it for the display of the Boterist sculptures and my commentary, and the lovely plaza of the Museo de Antioquia. And I just love The spire of this building, beautiful, reminds me of Europe. Anyway, I think we're gonna call it a day for the moment for filming. So this has been CB Ahern, and we're out. Kaboom.